11 IPv6 coming to an ISP near you. Happy IPv6 day, everyone. So, why do I start with a piece of silliness like that? It's all marketing. That's the message from today. I don't have a product to sell you. Thank God. No pitch. But what I do have is something to share with you is a set of experiences using products with real people or real simulated people, depending. And the point of really this presentation today, and the point of a lot of the experience I have, is that it's all marketing. And it's either all marketing or social engineering. You decide where on the spectrum social engineering starts or stops and marketing begins or ends. But because we're dealing with people, and the point of what we were trying to do, in a nutshell, improve our security posture by looking at one specific thing, our web application vulnerabilities, and decrease the amount of vulnerabilities. Well, that doesn't happen by magic. It doesn't happen because you've got tools, because you've installed appliances. The only way that changes is if you change people's behavior. Right? It's the same, the other marketing message you heard, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Well, web application security doesn't improve by itself. People improve web application security by doing something that heretofore they had not been doing. So you've got to win over their hearts and minds. Sorry, I'm a veteran of last century's war, and hearts and minds were real important to us at one point in history. Maybe not so much now. So we really want to talk a lot about marketing, communications, how people have behaved in our environment, some of the pitfalls we ran into, some of the gotchas, what we did about it, and ultimately what we got out of it. Did we actually change things for the better? Did we change things for the worse? Did we change things at all? That's what I think you'd be interested in hearing. So, as I said, it's all about marketing. To me, operating this area, the communication among people is much more important than any of the technology they're currently using or any of the technology we're trying to introduce. And we'll explore why that is. I also want to point out that no matter how focused you are on what your messages are to the various audiences you need to address, you will in fact be misunderstood if you're speaking English. It's my only language, it's my primary language. I've been speaking it reasonably successful now for a number of years, and English is inherently an ambiguous language. You've got to remember that you're saying something, there's a picture in your mind of what you're saying, there's a picture in my mind right now of what I think I'm saying to you. All of you are receiving something different. Many of you are in fact receiving the message I think I'm conveying, but not necessarily in the way I think I'm telling it to you, because you're different people. You have different experiences. The words have nuances that I'm not necessarily in tune with. So this is real important too when you're in this sort of high pressure, tense situation. Your job is to get things better, to improve application security, to get people to do better code, have fewer vulnerabilities, change behavior. You're under pressure. Developers are under pressure to do the things that they do with tight schedules, low budgets, function reps beating the dickens out of them because they didn't get it right, pressure from the executives wondering if they're going to meet their bonus criteria this year or not on the backs of the fungible work units that work for them. Sorry. And so you got all this dynamic going on, and you're trying to interject another message that probably is not their first most important message, or the second, or the third, may not even be on the radar, but you've got a job to do too. And so you're trying to introduce this message and, again, change behavior in this environment when they're already under a lot of pressure to understand messages that are impinging on them. And certainly, one of the things I want to explain briefly tonight is how our program evolved. We started in the summer of 2008, driven by a couple of things. First off, the approximate cause was to start achieving better compliance with the PCI requirements. So that was the immediate driver that got some attention to the issue. Good or bad, it helped in that sense. The other thing that helped more than anything else was, I'm not sure how it happened. We can attribute it to just a lot of dumb luck, or we can attribute it to years of lobbying and education. Let's rack it up to diligence on our part. We convinced the CIO to pay more attention to these things, and he agreed, and he got involved in a very personal way with this issue. So he wanted to know how, in fact, we were not only going to achieve PCI compliance, but seeing that the requirements were increasingly tight, and that we wanted to drive the cost of the compliance out of the process, like you do with any of these things. How could we maintain? How could we be compliant? Okay, well that's wonderful, but he says that's not really his driver. He says, how can we be more secure in our webinars? Forgetting what PCI thinks they want, and whatever the QSA comes in and thinks they can audit for. Are we actually demonstrably better off with this program? And can we continue that process rather than remain static? Can we have the organization demonstrate steady improvements to him? He was going to insist on that. So you go to all these conferences and you hear, get executive backing. Well, we got it right from the start. Again, I'm not entirely sure why, but I'm not looking a gift horse in the mouth. We had it right from the get-go, and we have it still. And it was absolutely crucial to succeed at this, and we'll see why in a minute. So one of the first things we did in the summer of 2008 is craft a story for what is it we're going to achieve, and how do we think we're going to achieve it. And the story right from the start gets a little complicated, and I won't go into all the details, but suffice it to say that we don't have a monolithic security team at UPS, and so we need to engage people from different functions and different parts of the organization. You know, they're all IT people of one sort or another, but they're reporting through different chains of command, ultimately to the CIO, but there's some fragmentation. So this is the polite way of saying there's a lot of politics involved, okay? You've got people, you've got problems to solve, i.e. politics, right? So it's not a bad word. Politics is how you negotiate with people to allocate resources, you know, to get something done in a common interest. That's what it's all about. So just like marketing, getting your message straight, getting your story straight was real important. And I brought together a core group of people from the stakeholders, and we spent about a month working on our story. What were we going to achieve? How were we going to achieve it? And it became real evident that even from the beginning, that our program was going to evolve over time. What we started with was not going to be what was going to be executing 6 months down the road, and certainly wouldn't resemble anything that we had in place a year and a half down the road. So knowing that this was going to evolve, it was real important not to build just a static story, but more or less develop a framework in which parts of the story could snap in and snap out in very clear and distinct ways, so you wouldn't be confusing the audience. So you can say, okay, 3 months into the program, we've established some baseline activities, we've made some demonstrable progress, people are communicating well at that point, and then I would say, all right, it's time now to evolve one component of this program, and clearly this is what we're doing.